right, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Most Important Conversations. Today, I'm with my co-host, Dan Silberberg. We are talking about leadership in this new age that we find ourselves in. And I just want to kind of take a moment and frame this a little bit. What is this new age that we're talking about? So let's just sort of lay it out. Artificial intelligence is the most disruptive technology, probably even more disruptive than the internet itself. Or at least at that same level. It is going to displace. We don't know because we can't read a crystal ball, but there's a lot of speculation out there. If you look at a lot of the consulting firms, Deloitte, Gartner, EY, Accenture, Microsoft, Google, they're all doing their own sort of peering into the crystal ball, trying to understand what are going to be the impacts of artificial intelligence on the work world. According to Pew Research, 90% of Americans, and we can extrapolate and I think fairly confidently deduce that it's going to be the same in other countries relatively, that 90% of people are employees. They work for companies as employees. They've been paid to show up to do a very specific job every day, do that job well, and in exchange, they get paid, whatever they get paid. Usually it's about a third of the value that they're actually bringing to the company. And so 90% of people work for someone. 10%, according to Pew Research, are entrepreneurs or small business owners or self-employed. And I won't get into, or Dan, I don't think we should get into that, the distinguishing entrepreneur from self-employed from small business owner. There is a distinguishing factor to look at. They are not the same kinds of people. But we're not going to dig into that today. That's another episode. What we want to talk about today is the AI displacement of the employee workforce into the 10% bucket. How many people are going to lose their job or have to learn to do another job as a result of AI? The numbers out there vary widely. I've seen numbers as low as by 2030, we're going to see 30% displacement of employees as a result of AI taking their jobs, and as high as 85%. I don't think it'll be 85%, but and where that number comes from is Dell, that said that 85% of the jobs that we will be doing by 2030 haven't been invented yet. And they still have that. You can go find that on Dell's website. That's their prediction. Does that mean we're going to have 85% unemployment? No. It means that the jobs we will be doing haven't been invented. And because they haven't been invented, we can't even train for them, plan for them. We don't even know what they are. Some of the 85% will be the displacement of employees into the self-employed entrepreneur, business owner space. Another fraction of that 85% will be jobs that will be new jobs, that someone will have to learn new skills and be adaptive and emergent. Dan, I think we're entering the age of the generalist, is the way that I would put it, where people are going to retain their jobs for their ability to be nimble, flexible, and learn new skills on the fly and be adaptive to the point where those skills will need to be upgraded probably on a monthly basis because things are happening so fast now. And for those who don't keep their job, they're going to go into the entrepreneur, self-employed, business owner bucket. And that poses its own world of challenges because the mindset of an employee and the reliance on the systems and structures that constitute the way the company operates, that is a situation that those people have taken for granted. And when you leave the safety and security and predictability of a corporate operational structure and you're put into an entrepreneurial space, boy, are you in store for the biggest personal transformation journey of your life. You have to be it and do it all. You need a different type of skill sets, and you frankly need to rewire your brain. So there's the setup. I'm going to shut up and let Dan kind of jump in on this, but this is a big topic today. We're going to just start to cover it, and we'll be continuing with this theme for a while.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I couldn't agree more. I think AI, without a doubt, is going to be by far the most disruptive. And the reason is the internet didn't require a ton of skills. You basically could get on the platform. Now, in the beginning, setting everything up, you wanted to go to a tech person, but you as a person in a business didn't really have to have a lot of skill. Email, pretty intuitive, right? So Word document, PowerPoint. Yes, it took a little bit to learn the skill of the application, but it didn't require a huge mindset the way we're discussing this now.
Mm-hmm.
So, having been in corporate for a long time, I had a finance department, I had a budgeting department, I had a sales marketing department, I had a product development department, a production department, an IT department. And it was very easy to sit and say within my job, boy, I was really smart because I was able to grow these businesses. But if I didn't have the factories and the production elevation that happened, I wouldn't have been able to get the product out the door. If I didn't have a supply chain person, now all of a sudden, as an entrepreneur, I'm no longer the one person in the one skill set. To your point, I'm now the generalist. I'm the strategist. I'm the product person. I'm the marketing person. I've got to get it delivered. I have to execute. And so I think when we look at this, here's the easiest way that I can explain it. AI is nothing more than computer intelligence. Right now, all the computer can do is go out and access whatever data is there. It cannot critically think or innovate what isn't available to it. And so AI is going to take what I call anything in a business that's process to outcome is going to be done by AI. And more importantly, we're already at the second generation of agentics now. And so these agents, not only are they going to be able to do tasks, they're going to be able to predict things. They're going to be able to rationalize what would need to happen in pattern. So if you're in the accounts payable department, AI is going to take that away. We're not going to need that. That 18 touches in the workflow today will be one or two maximum. So I'm going to say, and then when we look at AI, we talk about what's the biggest KPI is productivity, right? So if you look at a major corporation, a multinational corporation today, the average productivity of the individual is somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. WhatsApp, the productivity per employee is over 40 million.
Mm.
So even if the organization, if there were 5 people in accounts payable, they got rid of 4 of them. Now the productivity of the one person can go 3, 4, 500,000. It doesn't even register to the new business models what AI can do, how revenue now is set up, and what you track and build. And so the shift now is going to come to creativity. It's going to come to the right brain. This is not what AI does. AI is not a critical thinker. If it has no data and you're going to birth something into the world, it's not going to come from AI. It's going to come from the individual. And that really is the skill of the entrepreneur. Can you think of something not already existent that's going to change the world? And so you're not going to figure out how to do Diet Coke for 20 cents less. You're going to figure out Red Bull in a market that had no energy drink, or you're going to figure out Swifter in a market that was old mopping, right? It's a different skill set. So I'll kind of leave it there, but I think if we take a look at the shift in skills, mindset, and creativity, those 3 pillars are significantly different between a job and an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And it's what you're talking about is the distinction between innovation and creativity. So AI can innovate, no question. It can take already existing ideas that it can source and pull, and it can innovate on things. But creativity is when we, as you were just saying, there's nothing and now there's something. And humans are naturally creators. And so let's start with creativity, because that to me is the touchstone and the core piece of what it takes to move from employee to entrepreneur, is the turning on of the right brain, the turning on of the creative center, which, as you just said, for most jobs, unless you're in a creative job, and not everyone is. For most jobs, you don't have to create. You have to show up and you just have to kind of go through the already pre-existing determined emotions of what it takes to do this job well. You look at any job profile in terms of what the job entails. They pretty much list out the tasks, which are very rote. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And if you have a background in doing those things, you may have a good chance of getting the job. But to your point, moving into an entrepreneurial space, there's no one there to tell you what to do. There's no one there to help you do the myriad of things that you just listed that you're now in charge of. All the things that used to have departments that you could rely on and just pick up the phone and call, John or Sally and say, hey, I need this so that I can do my job. I need your input, whatever that input is, a financial input, a technological input, etc. You have to input all of those things. You have to create those things. And so the first and most important transformation that needs to happen for an employee is learning how to become a creative person. Now, I believe all people are naturally and innately creative, but that doesn't mean all people know how to be creative. So we have the latent creative potential in us, because I think all human beings, if you go back to when you were a child, we all imagined. We use that natural simulator in our mind called imagination. We played. Play is creativity in motion. So, we were in our imaginative worlds and we were playing and we were coming up with new scenarios and ideas. And maybe we even pretended we were a different person. And, as kids, we invented worlds. Maybe we drew, maybe we made music, whatever. It all came very naturally. And then it became conditioned out of us. As we went through school, we were told, don't do that. Now's the time to be serious. Sit in line, do this task, do this work. So we were trained to be very left brain, logical, linear, memorize this, don't memorize that. And we'll reward you with the ability to go play at recess and do things once in a while. So play and creativity and imagination went from being the essence of who we were to a reward system if we followed the rules and stayed in line and did the tasks at hand in school. Very much like the Industrial Revolution and the assembly line. I mean, just your job is to screw this thing and screw it over and over and over again for 8 hours and we'll pay you. No creativity required there. So now in the age of AI, you move from employee to self-employed, and there's a large percentage of people. I mean, at the very low end, the lowest percentage I could find is 30% unemployment. What does that mean? 30% of people from the 90% who are employees will be unemployed and will need to become entrepreneurs, self-employed, or create something of value for the society in order to make a living. And you're going to need to know how to use AI in order to expand your capacity and your potential to be productive as an entrepreneur and a self-employed person. You're going to need to, in some cases, teach an old dog new tricks. So what I'd like to share with everyone, just in closing on this concept, is now is the time for everyone listening and watching to accept the fact that you're going to need to start to turn on that right brain, turn on that creativity, learn new things, expose yourself to the different AI platforms, and ready yourself, because you don't know if you're going to be the one who's told we don't need you anymore. Anyone who's in a white-collar job, attorneys, accountants, engineers, IT, sales, all of these departments and more are on the chopping block because of AI. That doesn't mean that a company won't have a attorney or a accountant. I think what we're going to see is companies having what I would call master lawyers or master accountants who oversee all of the artificial intelligence that's doing a lot of the work for them. And they're the human being that reads it, rubber stamps it, and said, yep, this is good. We stand by this. But you don't need whole teams anymore. So all of those jobs are going to be moved out. So if you're not, and this is by 2030. So if you're not thinking and preparing right now for how do I turn on my creativity? How do I learn new skills? How do I engage with AI so that I'm so that I'm aware of it. Mark Cuban said a couple of weeks ago that, I think it was his son's friend or something asked him, what is your advice to anyone going forward in terms of how to remain relevant and successful in the emerging AI-based business world? And he said, buy every book you can on AI and play and learn every AI platform you can get your hands on. If you do that, you're going to be indispensable and you're going to be valuable. If you're not doing that, you're going to be useless.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty accurate. So what we're really saying is, are you a continuous learner? Do you have intellectual curiosity? Can you go to a museum and look at art and go, that triggers something, I can bring it over here? Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at a few things so we can actually make it real. How many of you used to buy Microsoft Office and you'd pay $399 and then you owned it for life? And then all of a sudden Zora came in and said, no, we're in the subscription economy. That little tweak created a whole new accounting, a whole new payment system, a whole new way of architecting. And then all these companies followed into it. That was real creativity. So there's lots of these different examples. When we look at corporate, what's the one thing we know about them? They don't innovate and they're not creative. How do we know that? Because most of them, what they do is they buy other companies. So what they do is they let a company, if you're going to become an entrepreneur, you may set yourself up and architect from the beginning, which is one of the things I do, is who's my exit partner.
That's right.
And then I understand how that corporation works financially. And so when I set up the new company, I set it up to fit into the different aspects, right? So now we take a look at, what does a big company look for? All they look for is that you have taken a market and proven that there's a market for it. So in the beverage industry, which I was a part of about 20 years ago, when I architected my all-natural, no artificial sweetened flavored water, I architected it for Coke, Pepsi, and Nestle, right? And so out of that, the way I bottled it, the way I marketed it, the way I priced it, the way I did everything was very much in line. So what do? When a beverage gets to $50 million, they buy it. There is no beverage out there that isn't owned by the top three because they won't let it. Vitamin water, which everybody knows, when it was $350 million, had barely made a profit, was bought by Coca-Cola for $4.1 billion. You mean to tell me that colored water in a bottle couldn't be done by Coke? No, it can't, because their systems are so rigid. Creativity, there's too many political arms. Wait a minute, I'm not in that division. If that shines over here, I'm going to. So there's all these political games that go on. So it's just cheaper. Cisco Systems, right? The whole routing, they built their entire company, John Chambers, on acquisition. But then also now let's take a look at a company like Salesforce. There was no CRM, even though Mark came out of Oracle, as did I. There was no CRM package. He created that. And then from there, it really sprouted and grew. So I think this is the idea of the generalist, and to start to think of business holistically. If you are in a function and a silo, you are at a huge disadvantage than starting to think about the business holistically. So buy some HBR business cases. Take a look at Babson. It's an entrepreneurial university, but you'll need to spend some time in the evening or on your own time looking up business. Take a look at the biz. Peter Lynch used to say, I was so good at picking stocks because I only picked the ones I loved, that I used myself. So go to the library, spend some time, look at a particular industry that gets you excited. Then take a look at companies that excite you and see if you can find the journey. There's a ton of information out there. I'll give you an example. I was on a webinar 2 days ago, and basically it was the business development guy from Kajabi. He said $700 million came from just one small idea. So they were spending $1 million to $2 million on paid Google ads, and they just didn't feel it was contributing. So they turned it off against marketing going, oh, no, 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 no. Well, they turned it off and nothing happened. But what they did is they created a marketing flywheel called the Hero. So if you enrolled in Kajabi, they'd send you a t-shirt. Those t-shirts ended up on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. That t-shirt then became a referral program, and it became the referral, and the more you referred, the more you got recognized. So instead of a t-shirt, there was 15 levels of recognition. That flywheel was better than any marketing idea. Amazon has a flywheel. If a flywheel concept isn't something on top of mind for you, spend some time at it. But this is the thing that happens, I think, when we have a job. We just do what we're told. This is the way we've always done it. There's way too many guardrails for me to get too creative because I'll get fired. And so I just want to say that take your time is the time for you to start to build these competencies.
Yeah. And I think the underlying message of this episode is this is coming. The transformation of the economy has already begun. There are already layoffs happening because of artificial intelligence displacing people. I read an article not too long ago. I believe it's still the case. I'm not sure, but I do know in 2023, Microsoft froze all pay increases for their employees, and they deferred what would have normally gone as pay increases to the employees. They deferred that money to investment in artificial intelligence. So another way of saying, we're not going to pay you your increase because we need this money to pay the replacement of you, which will be artificial intelligence. Now, not everybody's going to obviously not work for Microsoft. A lot of people will still have jobs, but those jobs are going to look very different. If Dell's correct, what you're doing today and is not going to look like it does by 2030. You're going to be using AI, and a significant number of those people will, in fact, no longer be needed. I mean, I've even heard interviews with Bill Gates, even though he's no longer operationally involved anymore, saying that companies like Microsoft and other companies are going to need to think about the possibility of, paying people to leave and paying them handsomely to no longer show up to work. And they'll be able to afford that because artificial intelligence is so exponentially more productive that it won't impact the bottom line because they'll get way more productivity out of AI. And so they're looking at how do we help people transition from employee to self-employed entrepreneur, business owner, and giving them that window. But you don't want to wait for that. Now, it's typical human behavior. Wait till the crisis happens and then freak out and react to it. And so this episode is a bit of a warning. If you're not paying attention to what's happening, it's time to start. And it's time, like, Dan, like you were just saying, for people to start educating themselves, learning new skills, playing with artificial intelligence, getting curious, learning how to start turning on that creativity, learning how to start turning on the imagination. And our program, Whole Life Architecture, that that we run and that we're curating, is precisely for this moment, to be able to help people have a place to go to start to develop themselves ontologically as a creator. What does it mean to be a creator of your life? And not just your life as a theoretically, but practically. What does it mean to be a creator in terms of how you are making a living? How do you be an entrepreneur? We actually in later in 2025 are going to be rolling out a TMIC entrepreneurs program, specifically focused on helping people transition from employee mentality to entrepreneur mentality. They're totally different worlds, A employee mindset is largely left brain. It's all about how do I logically and routinely go through the motions to fulfill the tasks that I've been hired to do, versus no one telling you what to do, no one telling you what's needed. no one telling you how to do anything. You got to figure it out for yourself. And so this is where, like you were just saying, that intellectual curiosity, that commitment to developing oneself creatively, becoming a generalist, being able to be adaptive. These are the skills of the new economy. And if you wait until the masses are all being laid off and are, realizing they can't just walk up the street and find a new job, you're too late. You got to be thinking about this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, right now, 73% of companies are doing 1 to 2 initiatives in AI, and almost 90% of that first initiative is coming in the area of sales marketing. So WPP, which is the largest agency in the world, right now, AI is creating a majority of the content that each of their customers is getting. So when you look at the marketplace, personalization, feedback, and content, that is a total AI configuration. So if you're in sales and marketing, then, and that's what you're currently doing, I will help you now get going because you're going to be the first to jump off the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so depending on whatever function you're in, why don't you take a little bit of time and see how you think AI will replace your function? What are the areas it can't replace? Because if you're now going to go on your own, companies are still going to need that niche. See, as an entrepreneur, you're not going to sell the entire world. You're going to sell, the riches are in the niches.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the niche? What's the industry? What's the size of company? All of those kinds of things are really going to matter. And if you just start doing that on a weekly, monthly basis over a 2-3 year period, maybe you have that much time, but you're not going to jump off the diving board on the 10-foot. You're going to start at 3 feet and go to 6 and then maybe to 10. So you don't want to be at the point where you have to be a world-class diver off a 10-foot.
Well, and if I were an employee for a company, which I haven't had a job in more than 20 years, but if I were an employee in a company right now, and if I liked the job that I had and I believed in the company that I worked for, so assuming those are all true, that's not true for a lot of people. A lot of people just work for a company because it's a paycheck. But if you actually get the ethos and the reason for your company's existence and you align with it and you like it, this would be a great time. Now, you may keep your job. I mean, we can't speculate as to what the percentage really is. There's a lot of variation in the projections of where this might go. But what I would do is I would look at the kinds of creativity that, maybe you have ideas about how to improve something in the company. Maybe you have ideas about a new product the company should create. Maybe you have ideas about how some new technology, if it only existed, could make that company even more effective. But you don't feel like you have a say and the ability to bring these ideas forward. Because to your point, a lot of companies don't really want crazy creative people thinking outside the guardrails of what's acceptable and allowed. But to the other points you made, companies love to acquire great other smaller companies that create things that they can benefit and take to market with, or they can benefit internally from. And so what better opportunity? You're already, if you're an employee working for a company, you know the company, you know the business, you know the role you're in. And if you are creative minded or you're developing yourself to be creative minded, build a solution or a product or something for the company you're in, build it in your mind. When they let you go, start that business and sell it back to them. You may already have a customer built in if you think of it from that perspective. So it takes thinking from a different place. You don't want to just be thinking from, what do I have to do to make a paycheck? You want to start thinking, to your point, about what do I do to set myself up for life? What's my exit plan? What kind of creative or innovative idea can I create and bring to the company that I'm already working for? Now, don't do it while you have your job, but you could start developing it, like you were saying, Dan, at night, on weekends, on your own time, and position yourself as indispensable. That's what I would do if I were working for a company right now.
Yeah, I think, and also to take that in a different lane. So you're working in a company, not everybody's going to be leaving. So when I hear your story, what I'm thinking is, I've got this idea in sales and marketing. I'm going to go visit the CTO or the CIO. I'm going to brainstorm with them about an idea. I'm going to get them to help me be the champion. And then I'm going to see if I can run it up the flagpole to do the beta for the company, because the people that are going to be needed are the ones who actually know how to manipulate AI. So if being in a job really is, that's the only headset you can get to, that's a way that you will be out front. You'll be considered in leadership.
That's
That,
right.
whoa, he was really out there with this early. We need someone like that, because you still are playing within the guardrails.
That's right.
Right. And so you really do have these options. But I think the best jobs in a bigger company are ones you create yourself for yourself.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
that's an opportunity right now in a really big way.
And just know, basic 80-20 rule, right? 80% of people are going to do nothing with the information we're telling them right now. They're just going to procrastinate. They're going to wait, and they're going to find out, I should have done something because now I'm losing my job. 20% of you listening are probably like, this is some good ideas. I should really start to think about this. So act on it, because you don't want to wait for the 80% to wake up and say, gee, I need to do something as well, because now you're just competing with all those people. Now's the time to distinguish yourself and to position yourself, whether that's, hey, I've had this idea for years. I've always wanted to start a company, but I've never had the confidence to be able to step out and do it on my own. Well, start to develop yourself. And this is where we're going to go with our next podcast episode is, ontologically, from a being standpoint, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? What's required to be an entrepreneur, so that you can actually weather the uncertainty that is inherent in the entrepreneurial lifestyle. So we'll get to that in another episode. But now would be the time to start developing oneself in that capacity, so that you're ahead of the 80% before they wake up and realize, oh my gosh, we should have done something about this. I should have done something about this a lot sooner. And to your point, if you're like, no, I actually like working for a company, I hope to be relevant to be able to stay here, then you have to do the kinds of things that Dan was just talking about to make yourself, as Seth Godin says, a linchpin, indispensable. Right. And what's indispensable these days, right now, are people who are masters in using artificial intelligence to enhance productivity for the company.
And so, Chad, the last thing I would say, because we are human beings, and as much as we're creators, we're also emotional beings. Yeah. And you have a whole thing around that human beings hate effort, right? And
yeah, they avoid effort and they avoid discomfort. Those are the two drivers of all human beings.
Right. So I want to say that I'm sure there are those of you watching go, well, it's easy for those guys to say that, but what about me? And I just want to acknowledge that, we are human beings, and we have emotions, and we have fears, and we have things that, well, maybe they could do it, but I can't do it. And all I want to encourage you is just to be aware that that's happening, and thank it for being there, and you're still going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Right. So,
well, Dan, you and I went through the fear that anyone watching who might be having that thought is thinking they can't do it. Right. I mean, how many times have I had to press through the negative self-chatter and the fear in the back of my head? Who are you to think you can do this? What makes you think you're so special? You don't know anything about this. And I was, able to develop myself to the point where that wasn't able to have a grip on me and prevent me from doing it. You do it anyway. And it's a learned skill. So yes, of course, it's kind of like saying, I'm not going to start doing yoga because I'm not good at yoga. I've never done yoga. Well, it's like anything. You're never going to be able to do yoga if you don't do yoga. You're never going to be able to be an entrepreneur or a small business owner if you don't start. And so it's, anyone's looking at us saying, well, it's easy for them to say it. It's only easy because we had to press through the very resistance that you may be experiencing right now.
Yeah. And the thing I'd have you look at is, if you have children or you have brothers and sisters who have children, just remember what it was like to learn to walk. You fall down, you pick yourself up, you fall down, you pick yourself up, you bump in a wall, you get straightened out. But it never occurs to you at that age because you haven't been conditioned yet. And that's
right.
how it works. And so I'm just saying, become aware that that's going on for you and that you have a choice to say, yeah, I know that, and I'm going to push forward.
That's right. No, absolutely. Well put. Well, we'll get into this more in terms of what it takes to be an entrepreneur at an emotional level, at an ontological level, at a level of creativity as we continue with this series on, it's a series on leadership and entrepreneurship. And why leadership is involved is because we're all our own leader if we choose to be. We all have the ability to step into leadership qualities and to develop ourselves into a leader as opposed to someone who's just taking orders. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a leader. There's no way about it because you have to get up every day and you have to lead yourself and you have to know where you're going. No one's going to tell you anymore and no one's telling you how to do it. So we want to continue on this thread on a future episode. But Dan, it's as usual, great to see you. Great to have these conversations. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us today. And please do tune in for another episode of The Most Important Conversations. We will see you all next time.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.